I'm Miriam Hicks, and I'll be running the meeting today. Andrea Calderon is traveling this week. So just to reintroduce the board, it's myself as Vice President. I'm with Soul Housing, the Director of Housing Development for Soul Housing and Vice President for AAHC. And then other board members with us today or may not be in the meeting just yet. We have China Osborne with MRA, Brenya Ehrenfreund with UNM. We have Melissa Toledo Ontiveros, who's one of our newer board members, and John Lewis with Habitat for Humanity is a board member as well, one of our newer ones. And we're very appreciative, given that we're an all-volunteer board. We also have the services of Brittany Espinosa with KW Consulting, who's running the behind the scenes and helping us stay organized. And we appreciate all her time and your membership that helps pay for Brittany's time to run these meetings and make sure you all have information in your email or links to the meetings to join. She'll be recording the meeting today. And Brittany, are we posting these on our website?
Yes, the recordings are posted.
Perfect. Yeah. And if you need anything, Brittany will be generally the one to help make sure you get those links or information. So thanks again. And if you just joined, please put your name and organization in the chat. And if you'd like, your contact information. Thank you. All right. We are going to start by calling this meeting to order and approving our agenda for this meeting. The agenda should be put in the chat for everyone to take a look at. We'll be hearing from 3 great presenters who have not presented at our organization meeting before. So really excited to hear what they have to say, and all very current information. And then we'll have some announcements and give some updates and ask for approval of our meeting minutes from last meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve.
Thank you, Renya. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, China. All right, and for these presentations, China is going to do introductions to our wonderful speakers who are here today, and I will pick back up after the presentations. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Miriam, for kicking us off, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. My name is China Osborne. I work for the City of Albuquerque Metropolitan Redevelopment Agency, but I join you today as one of the newer members of the Albuquerque Affordable Housing Coalition Board. It's been a real privilege to work with the entire board over the past few weeks, and even more of a privilege to help organize today's speaker lineup. So thank you again for being with us. And changing gears a little bit, moving our conversation from housing funding, which is what we've been talking a lot about in our recent meetings, that is really important in today's financial climate. But also important is talking about policies and regional planning and strategies that can actually contribute to an environment that will allow us to build more affordable housing as well. And we need both. We need the financial tools, and we need the political will and the planning and zoning tools that will help us scale up our affordable housing capacity, especially deeply affordable housing. Deeply affordable housing really refers to units that are available at 30 to 50% AMI for the households that have most need in our community. So I'm happy to introduce our speakers today, experts in the field who have really been working on these issues of narrative, planning, and policy to help shape the political discussion here in Albuquerque and in New Mexico that will help us get more affordable housing. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce Kendra Montanari. Kendra is the Transportation and Planning Technical Services Manager of MRCOG. MRCOG is the Mid-Region Council of Governments. Kendra's team is responsible for producing the 20-year Metropolitan Transportation Plan. And then, well, what does transportation have to do with housing? But in order to produce a transportation plan, you have to look at lots of statistics and lots of data, including just a reminder to everyone, if you could stay on mute, that would be greatly appreciated. So we don't have overlap of sounds during the presentations. So in order to produce the transportation plan, Kendra's team really has to look at a lot of data, and they have to look at a lot of future trends. And so that includes housing and household trends in Albuquerque and in the region. So thank you, Kendra, for joining us today. And it's a pleasure to have Kendra here to share lessons and insights from the 2024 Albuquerque Region Housing Needs Assessment. And I believe, Kendra, you should be able to share your screen.
Great. Thank you, China. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you so much for the invitation to be here today with the Albuquerque Affordable Housing Coalition and have the opportunity to present to this fabulous group. So really excited to be here. And I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully you will see my presentation from the beginning. Okay, do you see a presentation? Okay, wonderful. Yes, so I'm here today to talk a little bit about the Metropolitan Transportation Planning process, as well as the Regional Housing Needs Assessment. So just by way of introduction to us, Mr. MPO, or the Metropolitan Planning Organization, is a division of Mr. COG. So we're just one arm of a much larger organization. We were established in 1973 through the Federal Highway Act, and we're federally required in urban areas over 50,000 people. We help to facilitate the Metropolitan Transportation Planning process and the allocation of transportation funds. Our region is in central New Mexico, so it's Bernalillo County, Valencia County, and most of the populated part of Sandoval County, with 14 cities, towns, and villages, and 8 tribes and pueblos, almost 1 million people. And the entities that we collaborate with are many. As you can see here, essentially, we are governed by a board of policy leaders from these groups, and they help to provide the direction for the Council of Governments and for the Metropolitan Planning Organization. So as China just shared, we just wrapped up our long-range transportation planning process. Through our public outreach, we established a vision in that plan that our people-centered transportation system provides safe, comfortable, and easy access to daily destinations. And of course, as China explained, housing is a really important part of our origins and our destinations, usually at one side of those trips. So that transportation plan looks ahead 20 years to anticipate need. And it does have a project list and strategies to help us get there. But more importantly, perhaps it kind of sets a shared set of goals for the region that policy leaders have all kind of signed on to, which really emphasizes the integrated nature of mobility with our economy, our active transportation systems, which of course emphasize safety, our environment, and equity. And our short-range implementation, part of that long-range plan, is our transportation improvement plan. So to give you an idea of the magnitude, over the next 6 years, that plan includes about $2 billion worth of public funds for almost 200 projects and programs. So again, with an emphasis of connecting, housing to jobs and other daily destinations, we're doing our best through these plans to help facilitate mobility in the region. The MPO really provides that regional perspective to our local agencies whom we serve. And so, for example, this map kind of shows some of those cross-jurisdictional commutes. We know that about 64,000 people commute into Bernalillo County every day. And so it really emphasizes the importance of a regional perspective Of course, that doesn't just apply to transportation, but as I'm sure you're very well aware, housing, air sheds, economies, water basins, they all are regional in nature. So one thing that we try to do is inform that discussion with data. And we create maps such as this. What you're looking at in blue is housing growth over the past 10 years. And in orange, you see kind of our job clusters or job centers that exist in the Albuquerque area. So about 66% of all of our new housing is occurring west of the river. 80% of all of our jobs are east of the river. So you can see inherently there, you know, that's kind of a lot of what creates that river crossing issue that I'm sure you're all familiar with, about 470,000 daily river crossings. But the other thing, you know, of course, importantly, is an affordability issue. The further we are moving away from the places that we want to go, the more expensive it is for us. Transportation costs are the second largest household expense. So it's important to keep in mind location when we're trying to site housing. The other thing that we try to do is present investment strategies and incentivize projects that move forward these strategies. So an important thing that we talk about all the time at the planning organization is the need to emphasize centers and corridors approach, which of course is in alignment with our member agencies. I know you're going to hear from Mikaela, Renz-Whitmore, Bernalillo County. Other entities are often talking about using strategic investments to help catalyze economic centers. But the other thing that that does is it helps improve access to destinations. When you're developing in centers, it allows for shorter trips. It allows for those multimodal connections and also reduces vehicle emissions as well and creates those economic opportunities. So here's a map of our regional centers. They are aligned with our local jurisdictions, and our local jurisdictions actually created this map with us. So transitioning then from that as a backdrop, we partnered up with the city of Albuquerque on this study, this housing needs assessment, which was prepared by Root Policy Research. Many of you may be familiar with the New Mexico housing strategy that was developed by MFA. Roots is the same group that developed that strategy. And our interest really was honing in on central New Mexico. So we highlight the 3-county area again, as well as 22 smaller communities that align with City of Albuquerque's community planning areas and some areas outside, including Rio Rancho. One of the really cool products of this study that I don't know that a lot of people know about is dashboards by community. So here we're just showing as an example Albuquerque. There's some data on housing market needs. The dashboards also include statistics on built environment. You've got some commuter statistics here and housing statistics and demographics and projections. So how much are these areas expected to grow and what might those characteristics of growth be? So I had the link in a previous slide. When I'm done, I'll put it in the chat and you'll be able to access these. So some of the things that this report does, you know, the underlying kind of premise is the historical growth, and it looks at historical growth between 2010 and 2022 and found a lot of what we're talking about here at the Council of Governments, a lot of the 24,000 people that between that time occurred west of the Rio Grande, which again causes a lot of that commuter issues that we see today. Another important piece of information, and this is not unfamiliar to anyone on this call, is the affordability gap. So the difference between in Aqua, what might be a reasonable price of housing for somebody coming out of the rental market, and then in blue, what the median home price actually is. And of course, we see that gap widening, causing a lot of the problems that we know today. And the study also looks at rental housing and identifies a rental housing shortage of 22,000 units for our lowest income earners. And of the existing rental housing, identifies that about 41% of those existing rental units are outdated and in need of maintenance. And we know that this is an issue that the City of Albuquerque's Health, Housing, and Homelessness Department is working very hard on. One interesting piece of this study that might be a little bit new, I hadn't seen it before, is actually looking at who is affected by these higher rents. So one of the statistics is about 30%, 39% of workers cannot afford median rent at median wages. And when you look inside of those statistics at the industries that are hit the hardest, you can see our service industry. So healthcare workers, food servers in preparation, trucking and transportation, maintenance workers. These are the folks that we're really pricing out of the rental market. The study does come out with a future housing projection of about 55,000 new units that will be required by 2045 to serve the growth that we are expecting. But I want to make a really important clarification here. When I'm talking about growth, I'm not really talking about population growth. So I think many of us know that population growth has slowed, and that is expected to continue in the future. But what we're seeing is greater household formation due to smaller household sizes. And this is a trend that has been going on for decades, but we see it hastening. And the reason why is the aging of the population. So on the right here is interesting statistics of the percent of one person's household by age group. So for a householder of 15 to 54, maybe 1 out of every 4 are living alone. But once you move up in age, householders 75 plus are 50% likely to be living alone. So as we age, we will see even smaller population and even more increased demand for housing. So this does bring up some interesting conversations about how to be creative about this. Do we really need 55,000 new units, or are there some potential solutions through co-housing and other things that I know that the Aging Services Department, for example, is talking about to help accommodate some of aging seniors and their lifestyle choices. So I'm just going to wrap up this presentation with some of the policy recommendations that came out of this study. One key finding, as we talked about, there's a limited capacity for additional dwelling units in areas with large job concentrations on the east side. And we know that City of Albuquerque is hard at work with this first recommendation, and we're going to hear all about it from Mikaela next, to look at zoning allowances and trying to allow for a greater mix of uses, for greater flexibility in zoning. And this study even recommends the prohibition of single-family only developments in higher density and mixed-use areas. And also talks about trying to really emphasize that YIMBY part of the solution rather than the NIMBY to help educate neighbors on some of the benefits of higher density and mixed-use development. Another policy recommendation is that mix of housing options to cater to diverse income levels. And one solution that they recommend is providing and making more readily available financial incentives by diverse housing. This may be in the area of subsidies, or might also come in the form of tax abatements for grants for developers. Certainly another piece of that is through Metropolitan Redevelopment Authority, the use of tax increment financing to help revitalize some of our redevelopment centers. And also making sure that we're always mindful of anti-displacement and making sure that we put forward strategies so that folks who are living in communities that are being enhanced can stay in those communities. And we know that City of Albuquerque is right now, Planning Department putting together an anti-displacement toolbox to help address that. And our last finding here that I'll mention today is the shortage of rental units affordable to the lowest income earners. And here we kind of circle back to that need for regional cooperation. And so getting those leaders together to talk about a regional approach to providing affordable housing, as well as, and this is a wonderful recommendation, establishing a regional inventory of government-owned land so we can find ways to maximize public available land for maximizing public benefit and housing. So that is my presentation today, and thank you for your time. And I will stop sharing. I can
Thank
figure it out.
you. Thank you so much, Kendra. It's just an amazing, an amazing work, really, of just looking at the needs for the region and not just Albuquerque, which I think, as you highlight at the very end, is so important. And to really look at this not just with a microscopic lens on Albuquerque, but how this is affecting everybody, because jobs are regional, and we look at jobs as regional, but we don't always look at housing as regional. So thank you so much for that. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Please, feel free to come off of mute. And I do have a question just about that very end. We're talking about the importance of regional cooperation and working together to find resources or call out resources that we have. And I'm wondering, like, what are the next steps that we as coalition members can take, or are there projects that people are already working on to call out the importance of the regional cooperation? Like, how can we support the COG? How can we reach out to our city council members? Is there already a group or coalition that is working on this that we can connect to?
China, is that an open question to the group?
Well, I was asking you,
Okay.
but also if anybody else in the group wants to chime in, then please do.
I would love to hear from others. That's a great question. But one thing I'll mention up front is the Middle Rio Grande Housing Collaborative. That's a group that holds promise. It is gathering now to help kind of figure out how it can fill in gaps, I think, in terms of housing and the housing community. I think maybe potentially that housing inventory or government-owned land inventory might be an area for that group, but that's for the policy leaders to kind of determine. But that is a regional way that we can help increase access to affordable housing.
Thank you. And that regional Middle Rio Grande Housing Collaborative, their information is on your website, correct?
It is. It's through our boards and committees. Yep. And it's also on the county website as well.
Okay. I will make sure to put that in the chat as well. I put a couple of links in the chat, but I'll make sure to put some more in there. That's great. Thank you so much.
Like Winter has got a question.
Wint.
Say that so the Bernalillo County also has 100% Bernalillo County effort, and there are several counties that have that. And then overall, there is a 100% New Mexico effort, and that is based out of some work I think that originally came out of New Mexico State University, and it's about sort of all the failures of a system that allowed a young girl named Anna. There's a book about it, Anna, age 8, to not survive, essentially. And housing is part of it, healthcare is part of it, mental health is part of it. But housing is a big piece of this. And then there are several different groups that meet that talk about housing. Some sort of consolidated system eventually would be nice. Where like one of us doesn't have to go to all of these meetings all the time, where there's a centralized source of information would be helpful at some point.
Yes, thank you, Winter, for that comment. And yes, I think that as a group, and especially as a coalition, we are trying to consolidate a lot of information. It is hard. It's hard for us to keep track of everything. And so definitely figuring that out and strategizing, I think as a coalition, and then working with other member organizations around the region is going to be really important. So thank you for that. Renya, I believe you had, Renya, sorry. I believe you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Kendra. That was a great presentation and yeah, very useful work for all of us. I have a question, and this will probably be a comment that's trying to disguise as a question, but would love your thoughts on the single family zoning. I mean, my thought, and here you know, a lot of people thinking that even in areas that are more rural or areas that are primarily single family zoning, having a cluster of duplexes or having townhomes, you know, there could be small areas that have the character of single family zoning and meet other needs. And I would just be interested in the way, you know, in a way the recommendation is worded is that recognizing that we feel very invested in our single family neighborhoods here. And so it's a political question because I do think that there's housing types that could be compatible.
Yeah, Rania, that's a great question, and probably maybe one that Mikaela can better elaborate on. But I will just say, you know, we haven't at the Council of Government talked about prohibiting single family zoning. I think more, you know, the map that I showed about targeted centers, and I think from what I've heard in discussions with the city as well, is really, you know, talking with the community, finding out what the community wants to be, and seizing on opportunities for areas of change, or key centers where there change is a possibility and is desirable. And by targeting your investment in those key centers, you're also, on the flip side of that equation, protecting the rural character and neighborhoods that really would like to retain the character that they've worked hard to, or maybe move to preserve. So that's more the way that we look at it at the Council of Governments. But I think it's an interesting recommendation, and I think there are other communities that have pursued that. And so, you know, I guess I'll leave it there and see if there's any other thoughts on that.
This is Roger Valdez. I think there's a lot of opportunities in Albuquerque for infill development that has sort of consistent with neighborhood character. We're working on a 20-unit cottage project in the ID. There are hundreds of smaller vacant parcels in the city, but in particular in that neighborhood. And so I think trying to find ways to take advantage of those, and many of those are owned by the city. And we need to improve the process through which those properties owned by the city can be moved into development for affordable housing that may not be an extruded light-tech apartment building, but could be smaller scale horizontal projects that fit well into the fabric of the neighborhood. So it would create housing density, but also kind of fit well into the fabric of neighborhoods that are already existent.
Kendra, I had a question for you. I know that the COG has been interested in getting into funding affordable housing, and I'm wondering, have you all made progress in figuring out how transportation dollars can be used, you know, around transportation hubs for affordable housing construction?
That's an interesting question. Thanks for that, Miriam. I don't, at the MPO, we would not be involved in funding affordable housing or accessing funds. I think perhaps what you're referring to is our regional planning organization, and they are working on trying to help connect funders with gap financing for infrastructure of all kinds. And that would be a really interesting future presentation. I talked about that with China a little bit, from maybe Bianca Borg and or someone to talk about that. So I think there are creative ways to use funding. It's not, unfortunately, my specialty, but what we really try to do with the planning organization is make sure that our infrastructure dollars are connecting housing to their destinations in a safe way. So that's our biggest goal.
Thank you for that, Kendra. And I think with that, we'll need to move on to our next presenter. China, again, will you please do the introduction?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you again, Kendra. So next up, we have Mikaela Renz-Whitmore. Mikaela is the planning manager for the Albuquerque Planning Department. Many of you may already know her, and she and her team are out in the community a lot. They are responsible for the Albuquerque Comprehensive Plan and for the community planning area assessment reports in 12 community planning areas across the city. But what they may be most famous for, sorry, Mikaela, is the IDO, our Integrated Development Ordinance or Zoning Ordinance here for Albuquerque, which used to have annual updates. Now they're biennial updates. But there is one this year. Last year they had a break, but now they're back in full force. And I think Mikaela and her team are hoping again to really shake up zoning to allow for more housing in our community. So Mikaela, take it away with your overview of the proposed IDO updates for this year.
Okay, hopefully you're seeing my screen. Yes. All right. So yes, thank you, China, and thanks to the Housing Coalition for having me here. You're getting a bit of a preview because we are actually going live with these updates later this week. So if you go to all the links that I'm going to show you throughout the presentation, you're not going to find details about what I'm showing today, but by the end of the week, they will be there. So what I really want to highlight for you today are the changes that we're making to incentivize housing production within the city. So let's dive in a little bit. As China mentioned, this is basically a year-long effort to update our zoning code. So there are 3 major hearings that happen where the public can and please do participate and make comments, make it better, support some of the changes that you think are going to be helpful. So we'll have lots of public meetings in July and August where, again, we really hope to hear from both supporters and folks who may have concerns so that we can make these changes as good as possible before we submit them to the Planning Commission for the first public hearing in October. There's also, for those of you who are new to zoning, and God bless, here we go, you're going to learn a little bit today, but there's lots more to know. We do have videos, presentations, handouts from previous trainings that we've done that just say, here's what zoning is, here's generally how the city's zoning code works. So I highly recommend for those of you who are new to it, kind of starting there. We are thinking about doing another live presentation of that get to know your IDO session, but we haven't scheduled it yet. So stay tuned on that. But no matter what, it's a long process. We need folks to be involved all the way through. Good ideas can drop off at any of these public hearing points, and there has to be kind of a groundswell to get them back to the finish line. So please stay involved throughout. All right, so just kind of an illustration of what Kendra already mentioned, and Renya, to your point as well. What you're seeing on the left are all the places where only single family and a casita is allowed. So a detached house, which is the most expensive housing product, right? Anything that has 4 walls separated from another, you're losing some opportunity to save on construction costs for shared walls. So that's 64% of the lots in Albuquerque only allow single family. What you're seeing on the right are all the locations where apartments, up to apartments or only apartments are allowed. So that's about 22% of the city. And those generally align with our centers and corridors, which are so important, as Kendra mentioned, and for all the benefits that she's already gone over. I will just say this zoning pattern was absolutely intentional. It comes from a long and bloody history of institutional racism that zoning perpetuated. And at the city of Albuquerque, we're saying that out loud. And really, if we're going to desegregate our communities, if we're going to allow for more housing options available throughout the city to folks of all income ranges, we really need to change these maps. So one piece of legislation that's separate from the Integrated Development Ordinance that I'm going to talk about for the rest of the presentation is a resolution that's coming before City Council for its first kind of discussion in August. So the Council's Land Use Planning and Zoning Committee will be looking at a proposed R25-167 This is really a voluntary opt-in approach for property owners who have one of the zone districts listed here. They would be able to opt into a process, basically apply to the planning department, say, I own an R1 lot, it's on a corner lot. If they opt in through a legislative process, they would get upzoned to RML, which is an apartment zone that allows everything from single family to apartments. And on throughout these different zone districts. So again, this would be optional, opt-in, property owner does it. If they apply within the application window, the planning department takes it through for a legislative conversion. Otherwise, if you miss the opportunity, you'll have to wait for another resolution like this to come around, or get a zone change that you pay for and have to justify. Okay, now I'm going to be talking about the changes that staff is proposing with the Integrated Development Ordinance update this year. I will also just pause to say, council is also thinking and putting, scratching different councilors' heads about what they're going to be proposing. I can't speak to that. I don't work for council. The changes that I'm really talking about today are planning staff coming forward with a set of recommendations that we're going to be submitting, getting comments about, and then hoping to submit to the Planning Commission. So first of all, for those of you paying attention, the City Council through 2469, yes, basically upzoned a bunch of properties within a 1/4 mile of Main Street and premium transit areas, which I'm showing on the map here, and said within those areas, you can do anything from single family through apartments without changing your zoning. They basically changed the zoning map without changing the zoning map. Staff thinks it's much more predictable for someone to be able to look at the zoning map and actually see the zone districts that allow those uses. So staff is proposing to convert those properties within that area to the RML, the multifamily low density zone district, which again allows everything from single family through apartments, townhouses, cottage development, all that stuff. So this would be a legislative conversion, stroke of the pen. These properties would get new zoning. The portion in Councilor Pena's district, she only upzoned up to townhouse. So the proposal there would be to convert those properties just to the residential townhouse zone, RT. All right. Lots of other changes that really were aiming at either allowing kind of missing middle, gentle density. Roger Valdez, you mentioned infill development. These are all kind of proposals that would help those kinds of developments. One of them is to not allow single family in the mixed use transition zone anymore. That kind of comes out of Kendra mentioned that we really shouldn't be allowing single family where we want mixed use. So that is the only mixed use zone district in our zoning code that allows single family. And we're like, loophole, let's take it out. Here we go. Another one would be to just permissively allow a duplex on corner lots if they're over 5,000 square feet. People could park on both sides of the street. Seems like an easy way to get a little bit of gentle density inside neighborhoods without being in the middle of the block. The last one is a pretty big change right now. Again, Roger Valdez just mentioned a cottage development in the International District. This change would allow permissively those kinds of cottage developments on any lot in the city that's more than 10,000 square feet. And you can see there are a lot of lots that are zoned for residential in the city that are over 10,000 square feet. Cottage development does allow both single family, yes, single detached and duplexes. So that's another way to kind of allow duplexes on a large lot. The other category of changes are really about trying to decrease the cost per unit. And again, anytime you can share a wall, you're hoping to decrease construction costs. So one would be right now, for those of you zoning nerds out there, the city has in the R1 zone district, which generally allows only single family, we have 4 what we call flavors or subzones that have different lot sizes. This would be just to say, never mind, let's just go with the minimum, the smallest lot size and just allow that. We would keep all the contextual standards that would still kind of disallow people from consolidating lots of lots and building a McMansion in the middle of a small lot neighborhood, or vice versa, taking one big lot and really breaking it up into tiny, tiny lots on a block that already has pretty large lots. So again, that's part of that neighborhood character that we're still trying to protect. We've got a proposal, and I'll show you a little bit more in detail in a coming slide, higher building heights, but only in centers and corridors. So not fighting about in the middle of a neighborhood, but really allowing density where we want it on those corridors and in those centers. Actually, a lot of these have slides coming up, so I'm not going to go through them now. Just hang with me, thinking about decreasing cost per unit as we go. And just to say that the map on the bottom is the locations of our centers and corridors that we have mapped in our comprehensive plan. And when I say centers and corridors, these are the ones that I'm generally talking about. Okay, so in addition to that conversion based on O2469 that I mentioned for quarter mile from main streets and premium transit, we're also going to go one step further. If council's ready for that, maybe they're ready for this. We want to upzone properties that are still R1, RT, or RA within major transit corridors, and that's the map you see on the top. So major transit corridors are places like Montgomery, places like Lomas, and this would just upzone them to the residential multifamily low density zone district. Again, not to say wipe out what's there, but to allow somebody to convert an existing house into a duplex or to add a duplex if they've got a large enough lot. Similarly, there's almost 200 properties that are still in our activity centers that are zoned R1 and RT. And planning staff's looking at that going, why in our activity centers do we still have things that don't allow multifamily? So the real benefit of this from a missing middle perspective is not that we disallow single family everywhere, but that you can see in the chart, we're just allowing more housing options in more places throughout the city. So quite a few more duplexes, lots more townhouses, and a little bit more multifamily so that we get a better ratio on those maps of where you can do more than a detached unit. Okay, so generally for cottage development, there's a complicated calculation. The big move is to take it from having to go through a conditional use process if you only have 10,000 square feet to making it permissive. And then that really opens things up citywide. Building height, in O2469 that I mentioned before, council removed any building height limits if you're doing multifamily within a quarter mile of a main street or premium transit. So that's already in place. With the IDO update, we're going to be putting that in a couple places where people might actually see that that's an allowance and know that they can do that. To go a step further, what we're proposing in citywide would be to not citywide, in activity centers and major transit corridors, kind of adding a by right higher height allowance in the multifamily zone districts. So those are RML and RMH, residential multifamily high density. So kind of having a middle tier of a taller building height allowed in those areas, which then would bump up the height allowances in highest density centers, urban centers, main streets, premium transit. Similarly, today, there is no building height bonus if you do workforce housing in RML. So we would be adding that. You get another 12 feet if you do workforce, affordable housing that's affordable to any 80% of area median income or below. Similarly, the RML zone district doesn't have a bonus if you do structured parking, and so we're adding that as well. And because we're adding that and RMH allows more density, we'd also bump up the existing bonuses for RMH. Within the mixed use zone district, same kind of thing, a middle tier of higher building heights for activity centers and major transit corridors, bumping up the heights for our highest density centers, and then again, bumping up or creating workforce housing bonus for activity centers and bumping the others up. I can go into more detail if you want it, but that's the big picture. Again, for those of you zoning nerds out there, you know we have a neighborhood edge that's required between what we call a protected lot, usually a low density residential development. So if you are, let's say, Yes Housing, and you want to come in and build multifamily on the lot next to it, today you have to be 100 feet away, even if you're within a major transit corridor. So the proposal is to add major transit as something that only has to be 50 feet away before they can go up to the full building height. So adding major transit to the existing allowance for urban centers, main streets, and premium transits that only have to be 50 feet away before bumping up to the full height allowed by the zoning. Parking. So heights are a third rail in this town. Parking is a third rail in this town. Staff is talking a little bit about what happens if we just get rid of parking minimums like many other cities are doing. I don't think our politicos are ready for that step. So instead, what we're proposing is to generally lower the amount of parking that's required citywide if you do multifamily development. And in our centers and corridors, no parking minimums. So city gets out of the business of telling you how much parking you need for your housing. You then provide as much parking as you need. And the only thing the city is going to come in and say is there's a maximum amount of parking only for non-residential development, because what we don't want to see is a big box retailer that has a sea of parking in the middle of a really urban center. We want them to have to do maybe some structured parking, which doesn't count against this parking maximum. Those are the big items. Again, any of these things is highly controversial. There's going to be lots of discussion, lots of hand-wringing, lots of worrying, and lots of conversation. So we hope that you can be part of it. This is a great place to plug in to help carry forward the changes that you think may be helpful for housing production. And with that, I will pause for questions.
Thank you so much for Mikaela. That was a lot of information in a very short amount of time. And I just want to thank you and your team. And I know Michael Bob has been answering questions in the background for all of the amazing work you do. And reiterate what you just said. There will be a lot of opportunity for conversation, and it is really important for people who are interested in these changes to get involved early. And like Mikaela mentioned at the beginning, there are a lot of ideas, great ideas, or maybe not so great, depending on how you feel about them, that don't get out of the Environmental Planning Commission. Like they never make it to City Council. So it's really important to keep track of these issues early and to make your voice heard early. So with that, let me see. I don't know if anybody has any questions yet. Oh, yes, we do. Erin Thornton.
Hi there. Hi, Mikaela. Thank you so much for such exciting zoning updates. I just wanted to give like a teeny tiny pushback to the parking stuff. I think we are ready to get rid of parking minimums in Albuquerque. And I just wanted to give a quick plug. Myself and other folks in Strong Towns, we're starting our campaign to end parking minimums citywide. We have our kickoff meeting next Thursday. So if you follow our socials or also reply to my email, I'm happy to get you connected with that. There's talking to affordable developers. This is a big way that we can make a real big difference without costing, it doesn't cost the city any money this way, and we can find homes for people. So
love it.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, I'll say two things about that. One is in 2022, Housing Forward proposed just eliminating parking minimums for anything that's workforce housing. So that would be kind of an interim step of if you're doing affordable housing, let's get out of the way. I think if it's going to be a citywide, let's just get rid of parking minimums, that would need to come forward from a counselor. Again, these are changes that staff feels comfortable and competent putting forward. Some of those bigger political changes may come from a counselor. So it's not that it won't happen this year, it's that it's not coming from staff.
Great. We're getting our white papers ready to present to council. Thank you.
Thanks. I think Renya's next.
My question is also about parking minimums. I have always been a fan of eliminating them, but recently a colleague pointed out that given the high cost of construction, if we eliminate them, trying to encourage workforce housing or housing that's especially affordable for very low-income households, that these developers, there might be an incentive to eliminate parking, create in a way that it wouldn't for, let's say, middle income, higher density housing, because there would be the demand for the parking unit and having offsite parking. And as a result, then those complexes would have a lot more street parking. It would lead to pushback from other residents, and we would end up in a situation that we sort of create the conditions that lower house, like housing area that is supporting lower income households end up feeling like worse neighbors. And so it's just something I don't know, how much we know has that happened or not happened in other places, but it's just something that recently my very smart colleague Miriam Hicks, Soul Housing, pointed out that actually that there may be some unintended consequences of doing that. And then there also may be the situation that people living in those housing complexes just end up with less convenient housing unintentionally, because there's no on-site parking, unlike other people in other complexes have.
Point. Yes. Keep talking and thinking. Russell?
Hello, Mikaela. I'm very heartened by the proposed changes for housing, increased heights, decreased parking requirements. And I'm asking this question wearing multiple hats. Not only am I on the board of directors for Soul Housing, I'm on the board for my neighborhood association. I'm a land use planner for P&M. I've been an agent for private developers, and I had a fruitful career with you in the city of Albuquerque. And so one of the things that I heard today through the presentation is the need for infill, the potential for NIMBYism from existing single family neighborhoods. And one of the things that I've experienced over the past couple of years is the lack of clarity for the city's undergrounding requirements for electric lines, especially in areas that have overhead service existing. And a lot of times developers will want to move an electric line to allow for more developable area for housing, be it affordable housing, missing middle, or market rate housing. And sometimes a project or a line relocation may or may not require a public hearing in front of the development hearing officer. And my concern is that if on a project by project basis, things have to go to a public hearing, that's going to require neighborhood notification, and that's going to bring out potential opposition from NIMBYs to oppose a project by indirectly opposing a project by opposing the line relocation or the request for a waiver to keep it overhead instead of undergrounding it in an existing overhead area, which could slow down a project, decrease its impact with the number of units it could develop, or kill a project if it takes too long and financing is lost. Is there something in the proposed update to clarify the undergrounding requirements for electric lines?
Thanks, Russell. And you've emailed about this as well. And I don't think there is necessarily. I think it's a complicated conversation and one that probably needs more discussion. So not at this time. I mean, there's some language changing, but I don't think it actually fixes what you're bringing up as the issue.
Thanks, Mikaela. There's a few questions in the chat. Patricia Wilson asked, has there been permitting related to Ordinance 0-69?
I don't know. It's pretty quick turnaround. That just became active in April, May. So I'd be kind of shocked if there was.
Yeah. Sierra asks, does R-ML still allow single family development?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And I'll just say, unlike the mixed use transition zone where we're ready to say no more single family, the RML zone district, part of the reason we're comfortable proposing it to convert a lot of the R1 properties is there's existing single family there. And so we're able to upzone and give more housing options without making the existing residential non-conforming, which can impact people's ability to get a mortgage and sell the house cleanly and everything else. So I think for now, at least, the RML zone district, from our perspective, needs to still allow single family.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. All righty. Patricia Wilson asked another question. Would there be notification required to adjacent properties? And
for
I'm
what? If Patty can
trying
come
to,
on and
yeah,
say
I'm trying
what.
to think of the context.
For example, a corner lot wanting to upzone to opt into upzone, would their neighbor have any awareness of that process or not? And then the other thing about neighborhood edges being reduced from 100 feet to 50 feet, in my neighborhood, the lots are all 50 feet wide. So 50 feet doesn't feel like a very long distance.
Gotcha. So your comment would be, don't do that. As far as the notification for the opt-in, I think you're referring to the R25 167.
Yes.
It's legislative. So unless people paid attention to things going forward, and certainly there would be a map on the city website that shows where all those are. Generally, we try to let people know when things are going to the Planning Commission, but not a mailed notice requirement. No.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Winter, you have your hand raised for a question.
Yes. I wanted, how would we propose, or maybe it's a legislative thing, like to get, so the notification of like whenever there's going to be a zoning change or a zoning hearing or pick a committee that has to deal with zoning or land use. How would we propose something that like it's not just those directly impacted, but that notification somehow goes out to and not just like on the notice, but that like, you know, something real is done maybe to like the community groups that work with low income folks or the unhoused or something like that, so that we broaden the folks who are commenting and paying attention and participating.
That's a great question, Winter. I think I have two answers. Here's the answer from a governmental perspective. Right now, and since the 80s, I think the city has had an Office of Neighborhood Coordination where the city recognizes neighborhood associations. There's nothing magic about that. That could become an Office of Community Coordination. And if that legislation were to change to say anybody who wants to be that kind of recognized group that's going to give notice to people who are affected, then they could sign up like a neighborhood does and say, here's the population that we represent, and we want to get notice of the changes just like a neighborhood group would. So that's one, and that would be council that would need to make that change. There's a neighborhood association recognition ordinance, or NARO, and that narrow focus could be changed. My second answer would be, there are a lot of community groups that are paying good attention, and we rely on them to get the word out. And so those folks paying attention and sharing information, like China mentioned, you all are trying to do as a clearinghouse for what's happening, is also really important, because the government's never going to do as good a job reaching people as the organizations that actually work for the folks affected. So that's what I have to say about that.
Thanks, Mikaela. Yeah, good food for thought on all of this. We need to go to our next presenter. Thanks so much for for giving us this sneak peek. And you all heard it here. So if you're finding value in the information we're bringing to you, please consider membership. China, would you please introduce our next speaker?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mikaela. And we will definitely be paying attention and trying to get the word out to our membership as meetings become public. And so our final speaker today, certainly last but certainly not least, is Pascual Maestas, and who I'm so excited to have here with us today. We have not officially formally met, so this is my introduction to Pascual and in his role as Executive Director of NewMARC. NewMARC is the New Mexico Association of Regional Councils. So his group is the group that gets all the COGs, like our MRCOG here in Albuquerque, together to share resources and strategize about what they need. But his involvement doesn't stop there. As if that wasn't enough, Pascual is also the mayor of Taos. So Pascual is here to give us an overview of some of the statewide regional housing planning efforts and some of his affordable housing lessons from Taos. So I'm so grateful that you're here today, and passing the microphone over to you, Pascual.
Thank you so much, China. It was great to see you in person. I know we had a conversation over the phone. I'm very excited to be here with all of you today. And before I get started, just to get a feel for the audience, this is my first time attending the Albuquerque Affordable Housing Coalition. If I could just get a quick feel, how many are working in government? And if you don't mind pressing the raise hand if you're working in government. So it could be like the city of Albuquerque, the county. How many in nonprofits? I see a couple elected officials here also. Great. How many working outside the city of Albuquerque? So even if you're working in the city of Albuquerque right now, but your scope of work also is outside of the city. That is great to see. Housing has really become such a big issue across the state. So we all need to be working together to ensure that our housing programs and our housing initiatives are making statewide impact, which is part of the reason why China asked me to speak with all of you today, because as NewMARC, the New Mexico Association of Regional Councils, each council of government is working uniquely in each region. You all are probably very familiar with MRCOG. I know you had a short presentation from Kendra earlier. There are 7 COGs across the state, breaking up the state into 7 different districts. And what I've come to find as the executive director of NewMARC is that every district is very different. MRCOG, while the geographic area, service area is relatively the same, the amount of services provided by MRCOG is huge. It's encompassing Albuquerque, Rio Rancho, 2 of the largest cities in New Mexico, where some of the other COGs, again, may have a similar service area, however, are serving a much smaller population. But it doesn't necessarily make things easier. It just means they have different challenges. As you can imagine, rural challenges are very different from urban challenges. Some of the work that we're doing right now, and would welcome all of you, if you're interested, every Monday we host a COG call. This is where all the COGs get together. And the 3rd Monday of the month, we're specifically talking about labor and housing. And this conversation has changed. It was originally supposed to be about labor. And we came to the realization that labor and housing are very closely tied together, that if you don't have people able to afford to live in your area, that's directly impacting private business, government employees. So these are very closely together. And I think it's recognized also at the state level. We've seen housing now falling under the Department of Workforce Solutions. So that has, this conversation has been very good that we've been having over the past few months. Secretary Nair also participated last month and gave us a good overview of some of the funding initiatives that are coming down from the state and the work that's happening at the Department of Workforce Solutions. So it's really been a great opportunity for us to have these conversations about what's happening in all the different regions, all the different districts, and really an opportunity for us to learn from each other. Because what's successful in one area may not be successful in an area, and if we're learning lessons from one area, that could be helpful learning those lessons in another area as well. So I have two presentations for you today. One is this one about NewMARC. So I want to stop here and give you all an opportunity to ask about NewMARC or the councils of government. I know you know a little bit about what the COGs do, hearing from Kendra earlier and Mr. COG. But if you have any questions about NewMARC or any of the different regions, would like to pause here and give you that opportunity before I talk about some of the things that we're doing in Taos.
We do have a question from Winter online. She's interested in attending the meetings. I dropped a link in the chat. Those meetings everyone can attend on Zoom, I would imagine.
They are on Zoom. I have my administrative assistant, Joseph Alderete, who's in the audience as well. So Joseph, if I could ask you to post the Zoom link. And everyone is welcome to attend any of our meetings. The first Monday of the month, we're talking economic development across the state. The second Monday of the month, we're talking infrastructure. The third Monday, again, is labor and housing. And the fourth Monday is kind of a floater for policy and legislation, getting ready for the next legislative session. And again, everybody's welcome to attend. Infrastructure also very closely related to housing in terms of water, wastewater, those kinds of services. So I'll put one more plug in for the COGs that one of the things that we're very focused on is infrastructure development and helping communities find money, spend money. I know the city of Albuquerque has many resources and doesn't necessarily utilize the COGs as much as some of the rural communities in terms of things like making sure audits are completed, infrastructure capital improvements plans are submitted. The city of Albuquerque already does that very well. But those are things that the COGs do to help communities ensure that they're applying for capital outlay, they're completing their projects, and providing utility services to their constituents.
And then, I don't know, Mikaela, if you want to come off mute and ask your question or your actual request.
So one of my grand plans as a good bureaucrat, when the state did their statewide housing assessment, it only went down to the county level. And I was like, God, we need that at the community level, which is part of why we partnered with COG to get our Albuquerque region one done. I would really love to, and we've been starting to get requests from the state to provide data about our housing production. And so it appears to me that it would make sense as a planner, that all the COGs have a requirement to do a similar needs assessment on a 5-year basis so that we kind of keep our pulse on what's needed and how we're doing and be able at the statewide level to see kind of apples to apples, where is housing being produced? And if it isn't, can we start working with those jurisdictions a little bit more aggressively to perhaps address some of the constraints, zoning and otherwise?
Great question. We were working very closely with Dan Werwath. Oops, sorry, the electricity flickered. We're working very closely with Dan Werwath. We were intending to apply to the HUD Pro Housing Grant, the Pathways to Removing Obstacles Grant, and using that as an opportunity to start developing not just regional plans, because I think we also have to think of housing regionally, but then kind of creating templates for some of the smaller municipalities and all municipalities really to get a head start at creating an affordable housing plan. Thankfully, we've got some really great expertise at the COGs. District 2, the North Central New Mexico Economic Development District, The executive director is Monica Beta. If you've heard that name, she's worked at the Mortgage Finance Authority. She's written some affordable housing plans herself. Really great expertise in housing. The North Central New Mexico Economic Development District also doing a lot of housing projects, and received some significant funding in House Bill 2 this previous year. And really a lot of great expertise, like I say. But unfortunately, Dan Warwath is no longer with the governor's office. So that has kind of put a little bit of a damper on the work that we were doing. But we are recognizing that housing is infrastructure and is so closely tied to economic development and all the issues that we're seeing across the state. And the COGs are having this discussion about what we can do to support our local communities. I love the data idea. I think if you would like to speak at our next COG housing call to get us all talking about data.
I think that's great, Pascual. Thank you so much for your presentation, and I see a lot of alignment, and hope that we can hear an update later in the year as you sort of navigate the changes. I think we're all missing Daniel Warwath a little bit, and hoping the best and cheering on Cabinet Secretary Sarita Nair and her efforts to move funding forward. I would also encourage 4 rural communities to get their affordable housing plan put together, as that helps utilize the carve out in the anti-donation clause. And I think too, there's a lot of discussion about gap financing, but often developments need that initial municipal donation or land donation or kernel of site control that helps them move something forward. And so I would encourage us to also look at these smaller communities as needing initial funding, as a small bit of initial funding as opposed to gap financing, because it's just harder in the rural communities to get housing going, and less resources of know-how to navigate the system. And it's a very difficult and complicated system. So wonderful. Did we cover all of the questions? Does anybody else have another question for Pascual or our speakers?
See no more questions, but I did want to give Pascual a moment to talk about their recent wins, because I think it's important to uplift his wins in the community, especially in light of what you were talking about, Miriam, with smaller communities, it being difficult to get affordable housing. So I did want to give you a few minutes just to talk about that project, because I'm really excited to hear about it.
Thanks, China. And Miriam, it's like you were teeing me up to talk about rural housing. As China mentioned earlier, I also serve till the end of the calendar year as mayor of the town of Taos. And just like Albuquerque and across the state, we've had our own housing challenges brought on by our own unique circumstances, but also for shared reasons that we all know and understand. Just on Monday, we broke ground on our housing project. Long-term will develop 72 units. And this was a project 3 years in the making. And I'll start from the very beginning, that when I took office in 2022, of course, housing is the #1 issue in Taos and in many regions. We spent a year really looking at the data with the help of some consultants. Project Moxie, Mino Jen Lopez helped us to figure out where our gap was. And what we really found was the bottleneck was home ownership. There were opportunities for subsidized rentals, low-income housing tax credits. And I heard somebody mention the phrase, the missing middle, earlier. We really see that in Taos, that our firefighters, our teachers, our police officers, they don't make enough money to purchase a home on the open market, but at the same time, they make too much money to qualify for some of the housing subsidies. And these are working professionals that, they don't want to rent necessarily. They want to build equity and they want to invest in a home and in a career and a profession. So we really were trying to figure out how best to create home ownership opportunities. And what we decided to do is the city already owned a subdivision that had tried to create some affordable housing 20 years ago, and it kind of failed. There were 72 lots that were just sitting there. We applied for capital outlay. We were awarded $2.9 million. We got $1.8 million from Senator Heinrich's office in a congressionally directed spending. And then we got another $1 million, and this was really the most helpful from some ARPA funding that the state had left over that really gave us a lot of flexibility. The capital outlay, as you know, comes with a lot of strings attached. It could help us build the infrastructure, but we couldn't build the homes with it because we were required to maintain ownership of anything that was used to build with capital outlay. So that created some issues for us. But that $1 million from ARPA funding has really been the seed funding for this program. We just broke ground, as I mentioned, on Monday for 7 homes. This was the first pilot project, and what's very interesting, and I'm going to share my screen so you can see, these are 3D printed homes. This is the first time we're ever doing anything like this in Taos, bringing the cost of construction very far down to what we're calling an affordable rate in Taos. Let me share this for you so you can see. So these are the development of the homes. This is what they look like. When we broke ground on Monday, you can see this Cobod machine was on site. Utilities were already built in. Footings were getting poured, I think, at the end of the week. And what's really amazing, this machine can print a house in 7 days. And even more exciting is you can see kind of where it stands on this foundation. But when we're doing multiple homes, this machine can get put on a track and then just kind of moved like a train from one house to the next, and it really brings down the mobilization costs. Here you can see it's in the process of getting printed. Yeah, this is really exciting for us, and like I said, very innovative. We're in a pilot project phase because I mean I've never seen one of these homes in person, so we're all very excited, but also we want to make sure that we're providing quality homes. The really nice thing that I understand from our project developer is because they're 3D printed like this, they're very tight. They have a very solid seal, and it actually brings down the maintenance costs over time, the utility costs for people who get in. So not only are they getting an affordable house up front with their mortgage, but they're not seeing significant utility bills in the long run because they're very efficient.
That's amazing.
So it's very cool. We're very excited. I can tell you some of the hiccups that we had along the way because we were trying to create pathways to home ownership and sell these homes. What we had to do is develop a soft second mortgage program. We didn't want to create affordability for the first homeowner who turns around and sells it, and we lose that affordability immediately. So in the previous programs, you see soft second mortgages for $25,000. Usually it's like the down payment assistance. Our program is going to hold a soft second mortgage for around $250. That gets forgiven over a period of time, likely 20 or 25 years. And this is how we're maintaining affordability in the long term. We're also looking at possibly a deed restriction and working with a local nonprofit. I see Lisa O'Brien on here with Taos Housing Partnership. We're looking for working with a nonprofit to manage the deed restriction, manage the oversight of the soft second mortgage. We were really trying to take this out of the hands of government, so that way it's more independent. Our role is really helping to facilitate costs for infrastructure, grant opportunities, and but government should not be in the role of deciding who gets to live there and potentially selling those soft second mortgages for revenue generation. So it's been a long process of learning. Happy to, speak with any of you if you'd like to learn more. If you ever take a trip up to Taos, it's a great time to go rafting right now. If you want to come up, give me a call. I'm happy to take you out there. The machine is on site, like I mentioned, and is going to start actually printing here the next couple weeks.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, and I've seen in the chat, people want to be able to track some progress and maybe see updated photos. Is there a website or a camera that we can, go look at?
That is a great idea, a camera. We're going to be posting pictures on our town Facebook page as this goes up because everybody's so excited about this.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
like I said,
this is huge for New Mexico. So thank you for doing it.
yeah, thank you. And this could end up being, a model for many communities across the state because it's not just the 3D printed houses, but it's the, like I said, it's the soft second mortgage, it's the home ownership opportunity. I think what we're doing in Taos is very unique in a lot of different ways, and we're excited to share. And I'm sure there's going to be some hiccups along the way, and whatever we could do to make it easier for others.
Pascual, did you say which company it was that you're working with for the 3D printing?
Great question because we're working with a local developer, Pangea Biotexture is their name, Pangea Biotexture. And this came a recommendation from Dan Werwath when he and I were having coffee one day. He said, the best thing you can do for housing is help develop local capacity. That you could bring in somebody from Texas, you could bring in somebody from California, but they're going to build your homes and then they're going to leave. And this developer here, we're hoping that once he's done with our project, he's going to go build more homes in Taos and maybe more homes across the state. So I'm happy to support him.
Yeah, that's great. Wonderful. All right, that leaves us with about 5 minutes to move on through the rest of our agenda. So I know that we'd want to talk with you forever, Pascual. That was really, really cool. And based on feedback we get from this presentation, if there is interest from those that are still on the call or members, maybe we can figure out some way to get hands-on experience and go take a look and visit this in person or get an update on what you guys are doing up there. That's really cool, and I hope it does make a difference in a lot of our rural communities. And I hope that it brings this technology as a workforce area for development in our state. I'd like to see more of it. All right. With the wrap of our presentations, again, thank you to our 3 presenters, Kendra, Mikaela, Pascual. This has been a real privilege for us to get this information from all of you. I'd like to open the floor for announcements from our coalition members. Does anyone have any announcements, shameless plugs they want to put out there for the benefit of everyone else? I know myself, there's a livability series lecture coming up in Santa Fe, and it's all about zoning. So for all of you zoning geeks out there like me, it's going to be a remarkable one. The speaker was able to change zoning at the state level in Connecticut, and I hear she is an amazing speaker. So I'll be in attendance on the next one for that, and I'll put a link in the chat. Anyone else? You come off mute and shamelessly plug whatever it is that you would like around housing.
I'd just like to say and remind folks, and please, and there'll be an information sheet that comes out about this from Rachel Biggs at Healthcare for the Homeless, but the new housing application fees law and reduction of the max amount of late fees that can be charged is in effect. So that means that the maximum amount for late fees for missing, being late on rent is now capped at 5% of rent, and rent, not, rent plus everything else. And it used to be 10%. And then also the max you could be charged by a single owner is $50. And so that owner can own multiple complexes, right? But they can't charge you and do multiple background checks. They do the one, and then you can use that at their different properties here in New Mexico. I don't think the landlords are really on top of this, or they're not talking about it, or hoping that people don't know about it or something. But this will make some direct impacts on our folks' lives. Please spread the word.
Thanks, Winter. Can you put a link in the chat for everybody to go find that information? Or
yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I'll get out we're doing like a visual too, but I'll get let me get the statute just a second.
Great. Thanks so much. All right. I saw Jim Bordagiri with the State Land Office on the call, and he put some information in the chat as well. We also had another person from a manufacturer of homes attending, and they put some information in the chat. So if you all would like, take a look back through the chat before you sign off. All right. We need to take care of some business and approve our meeting minutes from the last meeting, which was May 14th of 2025. And I believe that Brittany will put a link to the minutes in the chat. So if you could take a look at those. And while we're taking a look at those meeting minutes, there they are. I see the link now. If y'all will please go through those quickly, and then I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting. That would be great.
I will move to approve the minutes from the May 14th, 2025.
Thank you, China. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Renya. All right. And then closing remarks. We are really proud to say that since our March meeting, we have doubled our membership, more than doubled our membership. So we're thankful for all of you that have renewed or become new members. And with such, we are going to be bringing some added benefits to those who have a membership. So we know that these meetings are well attended and everyone enjoys that. And for some, that's all you need. For others, would like to give you some decision making and some ownership responsibilities and benefits with membership. So lots of good things to come. A lot of things where you could make the decisions to help represent our organization. So without a lot of work, but maybe a lot of fun. So please update your membership, renew or join, and be a part of this new members only items that we have for you. All right. And with that, are there any other closing remarks from the board? No? All right. Well, thank you so much for making your time today, and have a wonderful week. Enjoy your summer, and we will see you in September. I adjourn the meeting. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody. I'm Miriam Hicks, and I'll be running the meeting today. Andrea Calderon is traveling this week. So just to reintroduce the board, it's myself as vice president. I'm with Soul Housing, the director of housing development for Soul Housing and vice president for AAHC. And then other board members with us today or may not be in the meeting just yet. We have China Osborne with MRA, Renya Ehrenfreund with UNM. We have Melissa Toledo Ontiveros, who's one of our newer board members, and John Lewis with Habitat for Humanity is a board member as well, one of our newer ones. And we're very appreciative, given that we're an all-volunteer board. We also have the services of Brittany Espinosa with KW Consulting, who's running running the behind the scenes and helping us stay organized. And we appreciate all her time and your membership that helps pay for Brittany's time to run these meetings and make sure you all have information in your email or links to the meetings to join. She'll be recording the meeting today. And Brittany, are we posting these on our website?
Yes, the recordings are posted.
Perfect. Yeah. And if you need anything, Brittany will be generally the one to help make sure you get those links or information. So thanks again. And if you just joined, please put your